Lovely. Okay. All right. So I've booted him out. All right. So yeah, David, so tell us a little about yourself, if you don't mind, how you got into this, and we'll kind of kick off on your topic.
Yeah, thank you. Thanks for having me. It's just fun to be here. I get to speak on my favorite topic, which is like SEO. But I've been doing SEO for 14 years or so. About 7 years, I went out on my own and started my own little thing. And then right as the pandemic got started, I started my own little SEO coaching service, which has been a lot of fun. So I got started in SEO after I built my first Palm Pilot application. So if you remember Palm Pilots, I spent 4 years developing the code for a 4K app. That's how good of a programmer I am. Right. And I had to have a website to support it. So I got into web. And then to do that, I kind of got into SEO, and that's kind of how that all got started. So I kind of come at this from a little more technical perspective, which, is a little bit different. So, but my mom, at the same time, my mom's an art teacher. So I kind of have this like creative aspect too, which SEO kind of brings together the technical and the creative. And that's why I enjoy it so much. But
awesome.
I live in Charlotte, North Carolina. And my pandemic hobby is birding. So now I can't walk down the street without stopping at every bird sound and trying to figure out what kind of bird it is.
That's awesome. Yeah, I've got a beautiful backyard. One of my favorite things to do is, so I've got two bird seeders on either side. And so they just fly back and forth. I just love just sitting there watching, and they'll whiz right past me. So it's your time of year, I assume. You just kind of sit there and just watch them all kind of fly through.
I'm mounted on my window as a bird feeder.
And that's cool.
The highlight of the week last week was a family of house sparrows who landed on the railing, and mama fed all the babies right in front of me and my cat, who liked it for a different reason.
Awesome. All right. Do you want to get into it? Your presentation is what WordPress developers need to know about SEO in 2022. I'm super excited to hear about this. So let's go ahead and kick this off. Thank you.
Great.
I'm going to mute, but just so you guys know, I'm going to kind of watch the chat. And if you don't mind, David, I might just interrupt you if there's something pressing. Sure. But I'm going to mute and just kind of let it go.
Cool. Well, I'm happy to take questions at the end too. So usually this is kind of one of these things that brings up a ton of questions, which that's cool. I wrote this presentation from the perspective of, I'm assuming you're building WordPress websites, right? So this is more how to set up a website for SEO best practices. There are some technical aspects to this, but it's not all technical. We're not going to talk about like keyword density or any baloney like that. We're just going to kind of walk through, if you build WordPress websites, what do you need to know? So I want to start by inviting you to visit CuriousAnts.com. I got a little URL here for you. We're all frustrated because SEO seems so complicated. You got to keep up with all the changes, wade through the contradictory advice. It's frustrating sometimes. Sometimes SEO can be overwhelming. That's why I created Curious Ants, which is hopefully going to teach you SEO while you're bringing your company traffic and customers at the same time. We're going to teach you how to do SEO while you're doing it. That's what Curious Ants is all about. So I hope to see you there. You can sign up for a free account using that URL. But why do we even care about SEO at all? If we build websites, if we build themes, oftentimes my friends, my colleagues who do this say, I've delivered a beautiful website that does exactly what the client asked for. My job is done. So what I like to remind everybody is that if we deliver a website that is built in light of SEO, we're going to deliver them a better product. How many times do people say, oh, I just need a brochure website? They just need some website because they were told they need a website. Well, those people aren't willing to pay much for a website, are they? If we, however, push that client just a little bit further to say, you know what, this is not just a brochure, this is a tool. to get you business. We can build them a better product. That better product is going to generate revenue for them. And then suddenly the thing that they thought was just something they had to have is now a tool to make them money for which you can charge them more, right? If we endeavor to build a better product for our clients, it will help them out, give them a bigger budget, at least the next time when they come back to us for a new website. That's the goal here. We want to have a better product in terms of the website in our clients' hands. Well, but before we delve into this whole 3-letter acronym here, let's take a moment and make sure we're all on the same page of what this means. SEO is just one of these big concepts. It's thrown around. Like, one of my pet peeves is someone asks me to SEO optimize something, because like, what does the O mean if it doesn't mean optimize? So let's just define this. SEO is really simply helping customers find what you have to offer through the search engines. That's it. People are looking for what your website has to offer, and we want to help them find your website so that you can offer it to them. It's pretty straightforward. However, there's some ambiguity. Sometimes people equate SEO with all web marketing. Every once in a while, someone will email me something and say, hey, Dave, could you SEO my email template? Well, no, because SEO is not all web marketing. There's different kinds of marketing, different ways we could market a website. And SEO is one of them. Let's not take SEO and say it's all different kinds of marketing. There's a difference between what we do for SEO, what we do with email, what we do with social, what we do with paid search. Like, those are different marketing channels. We're not talking about all those others. Today, we're only talking about organic search or SEO. As much as I love SEO, it's not for everyone. Now, it kind of hurts me to say, but the fact is SEO responds to a customer's demand for your product. If your customers aren't looking for what you have to offer, SEO can't help. Let's say you've solved the problem and you're first to market with your solution that no one else has ever thought of before. SEO might not be your marketing channel because no one's looking for it. They don't realize that there is a solution for their problem yet, so they're not searching for you. Let's say you have a very unique and novel solution to a common problem. Well, SEO might not be your play. You might need to hire a PR firm. You might need to do something like social media marketing to get it out there so people can start to understand that you are out there and you have a solution. Because if they aren't searching, SEO can't create demand for your product. Another thing that people think about SEO is that SEO is all about tricking Google. I don't know how many times people are like, what about this secret to Google? Give me the secret bullet to rank on. What do I put in my keyword tag? And once I do that, I got all my SEO done. No, let's not be so arrogant to think that we can outthink the massive amount of computing power at Google's discretion. Like, the algorithm is machine learned at this point. If you think somehow you're smarter than that, well, you're not. We're not about tricking Google when it comes to doing SEO. And this is one of the issues I think we run into a lot of times we talk about with web developers and designers. It's that I've given you a website that's SEO'd. SEO done right is not just a one and done, I've said it and forget it, like the rotisserie chicken from the 90s, right? You got to have an active campaign for an SEO campaign to work. Google loves new content. Google loves websites that are updated. If you just give someone an SEO'd website, that's not really going to cut it, especially in the long term. We can't just set it and forget it. So I like to boil SEO down into 4 basic elements. First of all, can you measure it? Second of all, can Google crawl your website? Third, what does your website say? Notice that what your website says is the third piece of this. And lastly, do any other websites link to yours? This is just the basics of what makes an SEO campaign work. So we're going to walk through this and talk about how each of these relate to you as a designer developer of WordPress websites, what you need to look out for to make sure that your website is set up for beginning an SEO campaign. So let's start by talking about measurement, and we start here because we need to make sure not just our SEO campaign's working, but that any marketing we're doing is working. We need to make sure we can keep track of, is the effort we're putting into it paying off for the client? Measuring SEO is not just about rank. In fact, rank is kind of a false positive. It's a false metric. Nobody can objectively measure rank anymore. There's just so many things going on, so many ways that Google personalizes results that you can't objectively say you rank for anything. Let's take it a step further. And that's why with every client, one of the first things we need to do is make sure we have some sort of analytics solution installed on our clients' websites. In fact, I'd recommend we don't even let a website go out the door without analytics on it. The best way to do this is Google Analytics. And I use Google Analytics on all my clients' websites. Now, we're talking today in May of 2022. Literally in 2 months, Google's rolling out fully GA4. I don't know if any of you struggled with Universal Analytics versus GA4. GA4 isn't quite ready for public consumption yet, but it's kind of being rolled out despite everything. However, there are some good things coming with GA4, so bear with it. However, make sure your websites go out with Google Analytics installed. The best way to do this is just simply using the SiteKit plugin. It just works so well. It's a Google product, and it helps you install your Google Analytics code on every page of your website easily and quickly. Now, bonus points if you use the SiteKit plugin, because you can not only install Google Analytics, you can install Google Tag Manager. In fact, I recommend you use Google Tag Manager to install Google Analytics on your websites, and you can use the SiteKit plugin to install Google Tag Manager. Why do you care about this as a developer? Because you know how whenever some marketer like me takes over your website, we break it? Because now we got to add a Facebook pixel, and now we're doing LinkedIn, and then we do remarketing. We're mucking up your site because we keep adding these plugins, we keep adding all this stuff. No. Install Tag Manager, and now that's the bucket to which I can add all my tracking solutions, and I don't have to mess with your site. Man, wouldn't that be great for me not to break your site, and then you not to have to worry about fixing it? Install Tag Manager and make everybody's life easier. Bonus 2, if you install Google Search Console using SiteKit, real easy. And even if you don't use Google Analytics, or excuse me, Google Search Console, your client's going to thank you. Even if they don't think they need it, even if they don't want it, they're going to be glad that that data is accessible later. Well, not only do we need to set up some sort of basic analytics on our website, we need to set up some sort of goal. What is the purpose of this website? Why do we want someone to come to this website? Do we want them to make a purchase? Do we want them to fill out a form, become a lead? Do we want them to watch as many videos as we can because we have ads on the videos? I don't know, but what is the goal? Again, I really hate the idea that some people have brochure websites, because a website should be a tool. It should be a tool that helps the customer visiting that website accomplish something. Ideally, that something is something that makes the client money. If you have simply focused on a goal that the website visitor you'd want them to accomplish to make the client money, you're instantly giving your clients a website that can generate them money, and now it's a valuable, better product. In fact, so many times when I get a website that's not built in light of some sort of goal, the first thing I have to do is kind of crack open the website, start adding calls to action, start adding forms, start mucking up the site you work so hard to beautifully make. So if you simply deliver it out the door with a goal set up in mind, you're going to be helping the client a lot more. Now, because I'm not the only one who thinks this, I'm invoking the Bible, which is Don't Make Me Think by Steve Krug. I'm sure most of you have read this book, but the idea is, when someone comes to a website, it should be clear and obvious what they can do. The call to action, sometimes we call this the big red button, which doesn't have to be red or doesn't have to be big. It doesn't necessarily have to be a button, but we want the website to say, thanks for visiting. Here's what you can do now that you're here, right? Now, I'm also showing you a copy of Google's manual review guidelines here because they release this every now and then. And it's basically a list of how a manual reviewer evaluates the Google search results. And it's kind of, you could think of it as this is what Google wants the algorithm to look like. And so one of the things this says really clearly is a website without a clear goal has no credibility. So even if your client just wants a brochure site, Google is not going to think it credible unless there's something that website can do, like contact me, here's a phone number, like something like that. And it even goes so far as saying a contact page is a requirement on every website. So make sure that you have a goal set up for each of your websites. Now, when we talk about analytics, it's 2022, we got to talk about privacy. Whether you're in Europe or California, I guess Connecticut just released something, Colorado's doing something later this year. There's all these privacy rules that we have to consider. Now, these are frustrating to me as something that gets in the way of me accomplishing my goals with my client's site. However, we have to comply with the law. The law is the law. Now, I will say, I am not a lawyer, to the disappointment of my mother. You might have to comply with the law. Look closely to see if your website even is necessary to comply with these privacy laws. There's a lot of tools out there that like to recommend their privacy solution. I believe they are genuine, but remember, they also have a vested interest in you paying for their solutions. So be careful and ask yourself, do I really have to comply with the law? Research it. Because if you comply with all these privacy laws, our analytics are going to dissolve because people are going to opt out. If you're a very small business, and if being a small business in a location that does not have any specific website privacy laws, you're going to have no traffic. So you're going to have no idea, is this website doing anything for me? Is it making me money? Is it accomplishing anything? You'll have no idea because you have no analytics. So consider privacy. I'm not a lawyer, but you may or may not have to comply. You take some time to look at that, especially as you're launching sites for your clients. Even though your clients have even less idea about website privacy, you as the developer have more. So at least give them the benefit, help them understand the aspect of privacy that they should consider. So we've got to the first part of what SEO is all about, measuring our results. And we talked about the implications of that as far as our SEO, setting up a website for search optimization. The second thing we have to consider is crawlability of the website. When Google comes to the site, can they read it? Can they visit all the pages? And this is where we're like, oh, thank goodness, we're using WordPress. WordPress does this really well. By default, WordPress is really easy for Google to read. And so simply putting up a WordPress website is usually, this is not a problem. Unless we forget to allow people to crawl a website. everybody knows this button, right? Like the discourage search engines from indexing the site. How many people, raise hands, honest, have forgotten to uncheck that when you launched a website? Me too. How many audits have I had where clients' new websites dropped in traffic after launching? This is the first thing I check. This button makes me a lot of money as people panic. Anyway, just make sure you uncheck this, because Google really respects this button. It basically adds a meta tag on every page of your site. Hey, Google, don't come here, and Google won't. So that is probably the biggest problem when it comes to crawlability with WordPress websites, people forgetting to uncheck this discourage search engines from indexing the site button. But we also need to consider mobile. At this point, most of our websites that we build for our clients, Google is indexing them from a mobile first perspective. That means that Google is looking at the mobile version of the website in order to determine how it wants to show it in the search results. Not looking at the desktop version of the website to determine rank. Think about that for a moment. Think about how that affects web design. We should be shifting our perspective to a mobile first perspective. Clients of mine who design from a mobile first perspective, I don't build websites, I just do the SEO on them, but clients of mine who've built from a mobile first perspective typically have better performing websites because they build up from mobile rather than build down to mobile. And that one perspective change makes a big difference in their website. It's simple things like, building mobile first. You might have heard of AMP. AMP is obsolete. You can forget about it. If you've never heard of it, then you can just ignore what I just said. But the easiest way to check if your website is mobile friendly is simply using Google's mobile friendly test. This is a URL by URL test. And you can put a URL in and it will say yes or no. Is your page mobile friendly? If it passes, you great. No problem. Google's have no problem reading it. If it has any troubles, it's going to tell you what the troubles it's having are and how to fix it. This is not a very scalable solution because it is a URL by URL solution, but thankfully you use SiteKit and you install Google Search Console. And Search Console has a mobile usability report that will tell you how many of your pages are mobile friendly, or probably more importantly, if any of your pages are not mobile friendly. Now, along with mobile, we have to talk about speed. And I say speed in quotation marks here because speed is a little misnomer. It's not exactly what Google's looking at. Google realized that they can't objectively measure speed on websites because it factors in so many things they can't control. If you're looking at it from your phone with a poor connection, remember the algorithm is mobile first at this point. If you're looking at it from, I have a gig of fiber here at my house, or you don't, like, what does speed mean? So Google broke this down into what they call the 3 web core vitals. Content layout shift, which is basically the idea of, how when you load a website, if sometimes once it loads, something shifts real quick, that's content layout shift. That is a problem. Needs to be fixed if your website does that. Largest contentful paint is another web core vital. That means the largest item that loads on any web page needs to load in less than 2.5 seconds. First input delay. This means the time it takes before a website user can start to input on the website needs to be less than 100 milliseconds. Frankly, this week, I didn't even have time to update my presentation. There is a talk about removing first input delay and adding a different web core vital. So stay tuned to Google to find out what that is. Or you can keep an eye on Page Speed Insights, every developer's most hated tool. I know a lot of people like GTmetrix and other page speed tools. However, remember, Google's not judging speed. It's judging the 3 web core vitals. It's also judging it from a mobile perspective, not the desktop perspective. So you need to make sure that your 3 web core vitals are within the green acceptable place. If your 3 web core vitals are good, you're getting all the advantages that Google will give you for having a fast website. This is a URL by URL tool, but thanks to Search Console, you can look at this overall from your website and see all the pages, how they all perform, and if you need to make improvements on all of them. So it becomes a little bit more scalable from within the Search Console interface. Highly recommend, can you tell, everybody install Google Search Console. One of the other latest cool little things maybe you've heard about, it's called Index Now. This is a tool that Bing and a couple of the other search engines are rolling out. Perhaps you've heard of Bing. There is another search engine besides Google. It has such a minuscule amount of use, people forget about it. However, Google is experimenting with this, so they might adopt it, they might not. What is Index Now? Remember Ping-O-Matic? Remember how when you go into the settings of WordPress, you can say, hey, should I ping this every time you launch a new site? Index Now is kind of the same thing, but you're sending it straight to search engines like Bing. I think DuckDuckGo uses it too, and a couple others, Baidu probably. And Google, like I said, is considering this. So if you want to help your search engines find your content quicker, well, send it to them. Install the Index Now plugin. It's really easy. Just do it, and you'll be making everybody's life easy. So we've measured our clients' sites. We made sure that Google can crawl them. And next, we finally get to content, right? This is where a lot of people think SEO starts. What are my keywords? How many of my keywords did I put on the page? Blah, blah, blah. But remember, what good is having a keyword optimized page if Google can't read it? And what good is having a website that Google can read if you don't know if anybody really is even reading it? That's why measurement's important. And that's why we start there. We go to crawling, and then we get finally to the content. And this is where developers hate me. Especially designers hate me. We got to have words on the page. I know that it's not cool. I know that you have a bunch of beautiful 10 gigabyte pictures that you'd love to put on that page so people could see the beauty of your clients, whatever they have to offer. But Google ultimately uses words to identify what the page is about. Words give credibility that images can't. If I have a picture of a lawnmower on a page, it could be the most beautiful, well-staged, well-lit lawnmower, but what do I offer? Do I offer lawnmower services, like repair services? Do I offer a lawn care? Do I sell lawnmowers? Am I giving a review of what I did for work this summer? What does the lawnmower picture mean? Unless we have words on the page, we have no idea. And Google has even less, because Google just doesn't catch drifts very well. Now, I'm going to duck after I say this, but you really need to have no less than 500 words on your page. Don't hit me. It gets worse. Ideally over 1,000. Don't hit me. I know you don't want to put 1,000 words on your page, but make sure your design can accommodate that much words on your page. Sometimes designers like to limit where words go, and if you put too many words, the design breaks or it doesn't even show. We need to have at least room for 1,000 words on the page. Now, you don't need to have a wall of content. It doesn't need to be a vomit of 1,000 words. Break it up. But we need to have the ability to add a lot of words to the page if we're going to compete in the search engine. So just because it launches with less than 1,000 words doesn't mean it's wrong. We just need to have the ability within the template to add a significant amount of content. And this is where I again invoke the Bible. words do not conflict with good design. That's what Steve says. We should all acknowledge that. People need to see words to be reassured of the context of the images that you put on the pages. Now, after I say all that, I will say, hey, images are important too, right? SEO success is not just about having words on the page. Words are essential. Images are still important. For instance, Google noticed a few years ago how many different industries people use Google image search to find what they have to offer. Here's some of them that Google recommends. I wrote them down so I wouldn't forget. Do you do event planning? People use Google image search to find events, or at least to hire someone for event planning, right? Do you do something with DIY? People don't just go to Google, they go to Google image search to search for DIY solutions. Are you a school? Do you offer products for sale? Are you interior design? Do you do medical, fashion? You know, there's a lot of different industries that people skip the Google search results and they go straight to Google image search. So you need to be found as your customers search Google image search. And that's why a good image with a very descriptive alt tag will be very helpful. Frankly, this is how Google is going to compete with Instagram and other platforms that are very image centric. When people want to search for something, they're going to look for an image. But the other thing is there's this new product, perhaps you've heard of it, called Google Discover. This is available when you do a Google search on your phone. Google will suggest articles to you based on your interest. I've been playing guitar for a few years, so a lot of my Google Discover articles are guitar articles. Other things like that. Google suggests them to people that it thinks is interesting, and it suggests them using an image. You need an image on your blog post if you want Google to consider you for Google Discover. It's a great way to get that little bit of extra traffic. Now, when it comes to WordPress, be assured you have a theme, or when you build a theme, that you're using featured images and post thumbnails. Pick a theme that has this, or build this feature within your theme, because this will allow you to have an image associated with the content on that page, so you can be found either in image search or Google Discovery. Now, when it comes to content, we also have to talk about duplicate content. In other words, whenever someone hears that we have to have 500 to 1,000 words in a page, they say, oh my gosh, well, I'm just going to replace one word on another page with a different word, and now they're two different pages about different things. No. Content has to be unique if Google's going to pay attention to it. But when it comes to WordPress websites, if we're not careful, we're going to find ourselves having a duplicate content problem. Ever notice that when you publish a blog post and you go to the archive page, a category or date, the entire article appears on that page as well? That's a duplicate content problem. So we know, because we know WordPress, there are a couple ways around that. We can add the more tag in every individual post, which will only show a preview on archival pages, right? You're all familiar with that. That's a pain in the butt to go through every post manually and add that. So be sure you use the excerpt function, which will allow you as the developer to prevent the client from accidentally duplicating their content on the categories or tags or update archive pages by only showing a snippet of the original post on those archival pages. Your client might not know to thank you for it, but your SEO will surely do that. Do not forget your RSS feeds. I know that, with the going away of Google Reader, RSS feed isn't as cool as it once was, but I still use Feedly. But even if you don't, make sure you have the setting for RSS feeds set to only show the excerpt on the RSS feeds. Otherwise, the entirety of your blog post will be replicated on your RSS feed, again, diluting your content. So, a couple little WordPress tricks. Schema. If you don't know Schema, Schema is a way of encoding content on a site so that Google or the other search engines can interpret it better. For instance, if I gave you a series of numbers, 3 digits, a dash, 3 digits, a dash, and 4 digits, I think most of you would say, oh, that's probably a phone number, right? Google and computer programs really are bad about that kind of stuff. They don't understand that very well. And so we use things like Schema to encode our website so that Google is clear. Hey, this is not just a random series of numbers. This is a phone number. You know, God forbid you encode your phone number with periods or something odd or unusual for design purposes. All the more so you need to be using Schema so that Google can understand this is a phone number, a series of digits, a word, you know, blah, blah. Okay, that's an address. We need Schema so that Google can understand that we're providing information and not just a random series of words and numbers. There are 3 kinds of schemas that every website should and can include really easily. One is the organization schema that basically says this is the website, it is associated with this company or organization. And we can include several pieces of information like here's our name, here's a phone number, here's our social media profiles. How is this useful? Well, have you ever noticed when, even if you don't have a Google My Business listing, some organizations will appear on the upper right of the search results? That's called a knowledge graph. And adding organization schema to your website helps Google populate that with the correct information. God forbid Google pick the wrong Facebook profile and add it in your knowledge graph. This kind of prevents that. When there's this weird schema called website schema, yeah, you're telling Google that Google's on a website. It seems obvious to me, but there is nonetheless a schema called the website schema. Part of me says, why would I care about this? But the other part of me is, ever notice that sometimes when you do a Google search, it will show a search this website bar under a listing? Those websites have installed website schema and given Google access to their search query. Because of WordPress websites have a very easy to access search query, it's super easy to add website schema and potentially add the website, internal website search in the Google search results. Now, not everybody earns it. Google says you have to hit a threshold of so much to get that, and they don't tell us what the threshold is, but if you have a credible enough website with website schema, people will be able to search your website from Google. Pretty cool, huh? Breadcrumb schema is another schema that's really great to use. The value of breadcrumb schema is that when you show up in the search results, you don't just have your domain name / page / whatever the page is about in your URL. Breadcrumb schema will break it out and show the organization of your website. And that makes your listing stand out a little bit more in the search results. Yours will look different than others that don't have the breadcrumb schema. Also, it kind of shows that your website's bigger than just a couple of pages. You are organized, you have good site architecture. It's more that you company has to offer, and it kind of adds a credibility factor to your website as it appears in the search results. Now, the best way to install organization, website, and breadcrumb schema is Yoast. I know Yoast is kind of not cool anymore, but like, and I don't want to encourage the idea that, hey, just install SEO and install the Yoast plugin and you've done SEO. No, that's not SEO. However, Yoast just does some things right and does it out of the box automatically for you. And schema is one of those things that just automatically does right. I'm not saying you can only use Yoast. There are probably other plugins that do it, but the way schema is handled by Yoast is particularly done right. One of the tools to check schema is the validator on schema.org. This is such a wonderful tool. If you have to manually add schema for some reason, or if you have to troubleshoot schema, this is the tool to use. One of the awesome features of this is you can literally put a schema code in there and it'll tell you if it's valid. And if it's not valid, tell you why it's not valid. So you can kind of fix it before you add it to a site. If you have a schema error, then this website will help you narrow that down. Validator.schema.org. Google has a tool called the Rich Results tool. This is their version of it. I find it less valuable, but it will confirm things like we are acceptable for the site link search box, the search result bar within this third search bar within the search results, right? Not a great tool, but it's Google's tool. However, Google does within Search Console on a scalable way show you all the different kinds of schema that it is looking at. In this case, we can see that this website has breadcrumb schema, FAQ schema, and site link search box schema. Much more scalable way to look at the site overall to see if the schema is installed properly, or if there are any problems with the schema, rather than just look at one page at a time, which these other tools will limit you to. So we got to measure our SEO so we know it's working, so we know we're providing value. We've got to let Google crawl our website and make sure it can read our pages so that when we write the content, Google could read it, right? But the last thing we have to talk about when it comes to SEO is links. Now, links are one of these things that once people get introduced to link building as a concept within SEO, they either do one of two things. Typically, they go a little crazy. Oh yeah, they once they find out that link building is part of the algorithm, they will get links any way they want to. Well, Google's pretty much cracked down on that these days. It's really hard to link spam. I don't recommend doing it. But the point is, links to a website are still an important part of Google's algorithm. Think about it this way. If you go to a room and it's full of a bunch of plumbers, and you know the room is full of a bunch of plumbers because every plumber has plumber on their hat, plumber on their shirt, maybe their business card says plumber, their van out back says plumber. It's a bunch of plumbers. But which one of those plumbers is the best? Is it the plumber that has plumber in more places? Is that the best plumber? Well, no. The best plumber in the room is the one where everybody else goes. That person over there, they're the best plumber. That's what link building does. Listen, we know your business has a lot that you're an expert in. You do what you provide, great services. But does anybody else say you provide great services? That's why we need to make sure other websites link to ours. It's a vote of confidence that we are truly the experts that we say we are. That is how links are part of the algorithm. Now, if you're a designer developer, you're probably not going to do a link building campaign, but how you set up the website is going to matter when it comes to link building. So one of the biggest ways this matters is the URLs. Every time, how I say this, so many times when I've got a new website from a client and their traffic has dropped because they launched a new website, the first thing I check is is the web search engines allowed, right? That's the first thing I always check. The second thing is, did any of the URLs change? If a URL changes, Google has to re-index the entire website. Now, hopefully, after you build a new website, well, it re-indexes the site, it sees that the new site's better and it sends more traffic to it. But in the meantime, traffic will drop because Google doesn't know the new website because all the URLs are different. The URL is the way Google identifies pages, and all of them changed. Pages that used to exist, that it used to like, it can't send traffic to anymore because there's a different URL. So what you please need to do whenever you launch a new website, if at all possible, don't change the URLs. And this was a big problem. We all moved to SSL certificates a couple of years ago. Clients had installed the SSL certificate because they found out, oh, Google likes this, HTTPS. Great, it does. But if you don't tell Google the website was at HTTP and now at HTTPS, it would de-index the site until it found the new site. You have to set up a 301 redirect every time a URL is changed. And that change could be even really subtle. HTTP to HTTPS, one letter, one character changed in the URL, completely different. You have to have a redirect from one to the new. And it has to be a 301 redirect, not a 302, a 301. Let's say your client's like, you know what? I don't like having W in front of my website name. I just want to go with what example.com, not www.example.com. Hey, that's cool, but that's a change in your URL. And so you need to have a 301 redirect so that the search engines and the humans can get to the proper page. WordPress by default adds a slash to the end of every web URL. Some systems don't. So let's say you're migrating from one system onto a WordPress site. If you're going to keep the URLs the same, you're going to have to set up a redirect to get from the non-slash to the slash that WordPress uses at the end of every URL by default. These are really big deals to Google and common ways newly launched websites lose traffic. So just know, if any URL is changed, the old URL has to 301 redirect to a new URL. If you don't, not only will Google not be able to index the new site as quickly, but two, any links that were previously built to old web pages will not give the new web pages credit, because Google uses a 301 redirect to say, hey, I know you used to see this page is here. It's now over here. And I want you to give all the link credit to that old page to this new one. If you use a 302 redirect, on the other hand, you say in Google, hey, I know this page is here. There's another one over here, but keep the old page in your index. Notice by default, htaccess and PHP by default use 302 redirects. You need to make sure it's a 301. Now, if you don't use any redirects, Google will go to the old page and it'll 404. Not only is that a bad user experience, but Google will then say, okay, well, I guess the page is gone and will not pass any credit from links previously going to the old page to the new. It doesn't know what to do with them because there's no redirect. Now, ideally, you're doing this through htaccess. If you're using Apache, Nginx has a similar redirect tool. Just make sure it's a 301. You can use different WordPress plugins to do this. Not ideal, but better than no redirects. So make sure. Now, one of the best places to check if you've got a problem like this is, hey, Search Console. They have the coverage report here. And this is going to tell you a treasure trove of information. So for instance, just talking about URL changes, if you go within the content, the all content, oh, excuse me, I'm looking at my notes, that's wrong. The coverage report, under the excluded pages, it will tell you if there are 404 errors. It'll also tell you if it's detected previous redirects. You can also set up Google Analytics to check this, but WordPress uses a default title tag for 404 pages called page not found, right? That's usually the default title tag. You can search for pages that have that title tag to find out if people are landing on pages that no longer exist, and then you can set up redirects that way. Now, there is something that we need to consider as far as URLs called the canonical tag. This is just a tag that appears at the top of every page to say, if there's any variation on a URL that includes parameters or tracking codes of some sort, hey, Google, I want you to consider this version of the page the proper version. So let's say you're doing Facebook ads and you tag parameters in there in order to track things better. Google, if you don't have the canonical tag, Google might index 2 versions of your page. Canonical tag solves that problem. Best way to install canonical tags, oops, Yoast just does it right. So this is SEO. You got to measure it. Can Google crawl your website? If they can they see your content? And is it unique? And then later, do other websites think you're as credible as you do, frankly? And that is what we have to think about when we launch new websites, so we can launch a better product for our clients. But remember, SEO is not a set it and forget it thing. This is just the beginning of a true SEO campaign. So let's not pretend that there's a lot more we got to do. We got to constantly add new content. We got to constantly promote our website. We are just getting started, but I hope I've given you some information that you can set up your client's website with a goal of being able to start an SEO campaign. And that brings us back to Curies Ants, where I'm gonna, I coach several people. In fact, in about an hour, I have office hours where we sit down and we talk about SEO for an hour.
Ooh, I'll do that.
Oh, yeah, come on by. We have a good time talking about SEO. But yeah, join me. One of the things people are using Curies Ants for is moving out of the, hey, I got a website to build, and now I don't have any websites to build and how to have recurring income. Well, Curies Ants teaches you how to have recurring income by offering SEO as a service.
Cool.
And that kind of helps us to make ends meet between website designs.
How do you, what kind of companies do you like to work with when you're doing SEO? Do you have any particular type?
Well, so when it comes to Curies Ants, it's mostly web designers and developers who are wanting to offer this as a service.
Oh, white label.
Right.
Oh, fantastic. Okay,
yeah,
got it.
So the idea of Curies Ants is you show up and you're white labeling SEO to them.
Very good. Oh,
with
cool.
my main company, Reliable Acorn, I work mostly with B2B companies and help them deliver leads. So mid-sized B2B companies, they often do stuff like manufacture things that most of us have never heard of, but a lot of people need.
Right.
And those are the fun SEO clients for me.
Yeah, cool. Hey guys, did anyone have any questions? I didn't see anything come in on chat, but yeah, please open up the mic there and ask any questions. Please don't be quiet. Yeah, yay.
Yes, hello, how y'all doing?
Good.
That's great. I was curious, you talked about the redirects. Is there any value to personalizing a 404 page, so even if it does come up, it can still show that the account exists or the website exists, and then possibly redirect them back to the page it needs to go to?
So yeah, that's a great question. WordPress does have the feature to have a customizable 404, and that's a great user experience because, hey, 404 errors happen. Like we could make a t-shirt, 404 happens, right? And so there's several reasons to have a customizable, a 404 page. Number one, good user experience. We miss a redirect. We forget that page used to exist. We were in a hurry. We took a page down and we didn't mean to. Now, when users get to that page, they're like, oh, okay. And they can go back. We can put all kinds of helpful information on the 404 page, like a search bar or a contact us. Hey, did you find this page? Contact us and we'll help you find it. But the best part of a user-friendly 404 page is that if we set up a report in Google Analytics to tell us every time someone visits a 404 page, we can then quickly identify where we need to add redirects. This is like one of my secrets to new website launches is I'll go into Analytics and I'll set up a report to email me every day, every time someone visits a 404 page. And then I have a list of pages I need to add to my redirect list. If you don't have a customizable 404 page, they're going to get a server error page, probably developed by your web host, and you will never know. And you're going to have such a bad user experience people are just going to give up on your site. I don't want to mess with them. They're broken. They're probably not even in business anymore. No, we're in business. Come, give us your money. No, but I will say this. We don't want to shortcut this. The 404 page should throw a 404 header code, right? And should not automatically add a 301 redirect. Sometimes people do that. They'll be sneaky. And every time someone requests a 404 page, they 301 it automatically. Don't recommend that because number one, you're not going to be able to detect if there's a serious problem on your website. Two, every time your website passes through a 301 redirect, you lose a little bit of authority in Google's eyes. So it is better to identify it and potentially, for example, fix a broken link. Let's say you have a typo in your URL and it's going to a 404 page. You don't need a redirect in that case. You just need to fix the broken link, right? And so if you just automatically started redirecting everything with a 404, you might actually be hurting yourself.
Someone just asked me for, yes, this video is being recorded and it will be, we have a YouTube channel. So if you just go to YouTube and just search Houston WordPress Meetup, you'll see our channel and then I post these videos there. So, Rhett, you're not muted. Did you have a question?
Yeah, I did. Thanks for asking. If you heard me mumbling, I apologize. I was writing my question out. How much will relaunching a website impact search results with Google if you only add new pages, i.e. wanting to get more content on the site, but never changing any previously existing URLs?
Good question. I tell every client, you will take a hit for 1 to 2 months in Google traffic. Now I say that to see my A, if you know what I mean, right? Because we can't predict how the new website will be viewed in Google's eyes. Now, if we don't change any URLs, we're going to err on the lower side of that range. So it maybe only takes a month. And hopefully the new website being launched does things like better web core vitals, more mobile friendly, more room for content, better written content, so that when Google reindexes, it then gives us more traffic. That's always the goal. But I always warn clients, 1 to 2 month decline until Google reindexes. Now, there are things we can do to mitigate that. Again, assuming there's no URL changes, we just changed the theme, for instance, right? And so the URLs don't change because the themes change. We can do a link building campaign just to give Google a couple more reasons why they should visit our website and to reiterate that this website's still active, still valuable. And so if we can build a few links to the website while this is being reindexed, it will help. Again, the goal is to shift it down so we're not, we're at the minimum of that 1 month difference. But because even if the themes change, there's so many things with themes. Some of the themes are cumbersome. Some of them are very heavy. Some of them have 16 versions of jQuery on it. Like, we can't predict that sometimes until we see it. So I want to make sure my clients have a reasonable expectation of, we're going to see a decline, but the goal is after the end of the decline, we're going to be in the positive at the end of the results. Does that help? Absolutely.
That yeah, you definitely answered my question. I appreciate it.
Sure. That's a great question because it's a, it always happens. Like I've worked with some wonderful designers, wonderful developers. They work really hard to not even change a single URL. Man, we've spent hours making sure we didn't have to change a URL, and inevitably traffic's going to go down. And it's not that Google doesn't like the new website. Is that it sees something's different and it's going to say, okay, now how is this going to show up, right?
Interesting. How have you seen, A/B testing with SEO, like having, I struggle with having I don't personally do this, but I've just had some discussions with these kind of gray hat SEO guys. When you have one key phrase per page and they'll create a whole content on it and they'll A/B test it from an SEO standpoint, though. Like how that to me is like like you're messing with something that I don't even think it's quite valuable.
I've heard of people A/B testing SEO, and I've never heard of anybody doing it in a way that I believe is scientifically viable from a scientific data perspective, right? Like, you know, or being able to objectively say, oh, this wins the A/B test. Now you could do what we call a poor man's A/B test, right? Which is the idea of, okay, I'm going to change something on a page. And then I'm going to look a month later and compare the month after I changed it with the month before and see if it helped.
Right.
That is still not quite a valid test because there's probably other things you're doing on the website that might affect it. So I know people love the idea of A/B testing, and I do A/B testing for usability and conversions.
Sure. Yeah.
Absolutely.
Mm-hmm.
I recently discovered Microsoft Clarity. Have you played with this?
I've been using Hotjar, but even Hotjar, I have a heck of a time understanding, like, what am I supposed to do with this information? You know, there's so much data that pulls through, and okay, I'm watching people use it, but it's hard to gather a really good idea of like, okay, these people did this, these people did that. Now what? Yeah. So tell me about the
Microsoft Clarity does everything Hotjar does for free.
Oh no.
Yeah. Sorry, Hotjar. I used to use Hotjar.
Microsoft.
So just go sign up for Microsoft Clarity. And oh my gosh. So where do I even start with Microsoft Clarity? It's my new favorite thing.
I'm going to throw this in the chat here.
Oh my God. So this all started with this idea that, hey, I'm going to look in Microsoft Webmaster Tools to see if there's anything worthwhile. Blew my mind how good Microsoft Webmaster Tools is. You can use Microsoft Webmaster Tools to rank on Google. Like, that's how good it is. But one of the best tools in there is Microsoft Clarity, which is a screen capture system for free.
Wow.
So you can use it to watch people. Things like, I discovered one of my most popular pieces of content on one of my websites is that people were clicking on headlines, assuming it would jump them down the page to where that content is held. So I know to make my customers less frustrated, I need to add jump links, right? Mm-hmm. You can watch people, there's just so much. They'll document rage clicks, which is the idea that when someone's clicking on something so many times because like they expect it to do something, why is it? Hey, yeah, okay, fix your rage click, right? Don't frustrate your customers. You want to improve your conversion rate, don't have frustrated customers. Right. All kinds of really great stuff. And
this
frankly,
to me looks like it's, oh, I'm sorry, go ahead. Sorry.
No.
This looks to me like it's Microsoft way of getting data from websites that Google already does through analytics. You know, I'm looking at this like, how super cool. Why are they giving it away for free? Oh, yeah. but if it does a good job, then I'm, you know, anything that if you're going to give it to me for free and I'm just giving you some basic information, you know, that's great. Yeah, I'm going to check this out.
Yeah, it's a lot of fun.
Yeah,
it's one of those rabbit holes you can spend an entire afternoon and be like, where did all the time go?
That's all I need. That's all I need. I just spent all last week learning, and this is thanks to you, Eric, by the way, learning more Google Tag Manager. Eric did a really great video on Google Tag Manager last month or a couple months ago, and it's on our YouTube channel. So if you haven't seen it, it's really good. That and Google Analytics 4. So all last week of just immersing myself in all that data, because I'm afraid, I mean, you mentioned it earlier, especially from an SEO standpoint, it's like you need to start at least activate GA4.
Yes.
So that you've got a year's worth of data when UA drops.
Right.
No, it doesn't drop though. It's just not going to be tracking anymore, right? I'm not asking. I mean,
I'm forgetting. I think the idea, and Eric jump in, but I think the idea is it will no longer be adding information to Universal Analytics after a year from this July.
It'll stop tracking it and we'll all be forced to.
Right.
Yeah,
So-
that's the current answer that they've given, is that it'll stop tracking.
Yeah.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Okay.
So
We'll-
I
we'll
like
see
to
what they do.
compare. Oh, sorry.
He just said, we'll see what we do.
Yeah.
What they do.
I like to compare my clients year over year because that accounts for seasonality, which is pretty inherent in clients.
Yeah.
And so I need that annual data. I need to know next June or next July, I'll need to know what the traffic was like in last July.
Mhm.
And God forbid, next August, I'll need to know what traffic was like last August. So I need to, I'm treating the deadline, which is July 1st of this year, as the deadline to have everybody moved over.
That's a good point. Yeah.
And
Yeah.
but unfortunately, like, I mean, where WordPress being up, but Shopify is not ready yet.
Oh, really? To take on GA4? Huh.
Phone call tracking
interesting.
systems they use, like CallRail, not ready yet.
No, yeah, I don't use
So I
Colorado.
don't have that conversion data.
I'll have to I use call tracking metrics for all of our tracking phone numbers, and
Absolutely.
you're right. I'll have to double check. I just set it up yesterday. I didn't even think about GA4 on there.
So there might be a way to use advanced tag manager to start
Yes.
tracking that, but like I might just have to start doing it. So I
That's
don't
what
lose
I
the
think.
data.
That's what I've done. Again, thanks to Eric, he got me hooked on it now. So I'm all over Google Tag Manager, and there's some good tips in there on how to track phone clicks and phone numbers and when they get to your site. So yeah.
Absolutely.
Good
Absolutely.
stuff.
It's essential.
Yeah. Another thing from SEO standpoint, we've started to do is I've been super heavy into UTMs. So because from organic standpoint, when you go in analytics, it's really hard sometimes because it's got not provided. And it's so frustrating, and so using these GTMs now, I can now see where people are coming from and whether they actually came from a Google search or do they come from, a direct link somewhere. So it's been.
Be careful. How are you doing that?
What do you mean? How am I doing that?
So what are you tagging to get that data? Because UTM codes are wonderful, but they override default values. So you could be hurting your data.
Well, things like, Google's, really anything that we have a link from anywhere. So like, not from Facebook, because obviously you can see when it comes from Facebook, but we'll include certain campaigns. So if we're doing blog campaigns on Facebook, we'll incorporate that as a UTM.
That's good.
Or if a link that's coming from Google My Business. Right.
Yes, that's another good use. Yeah.
Yeah. So any website, if there's anything like a scheduler link on Google My Business, and I'm just doing things like campaign. But it's been super helpful because again, it'll come in as organic, not provided, but I can see GMB as the campaign. So I'll know that they came from a search from.
Yeah.
So
But by default, Google Analytics is pretty good about referrals from other websites accurately. Facebook, it doesn't, because let's face it, Facebook's competitor to Google, like they don't want to give Google that data. So UTMs are really helpful. Like I don't launch a paid Facebook without UTM codes, right? Because Facebook, because Facebook. And, but UTMs in Google My Business, they're a good idea. Yeah, cool. Yeah. I just want to warn you because like I've seen people put UTM codes within their internal navigation.
Oh, no.
No, yeah, exactly. You you start over your session and you lose the original source of, God forbid, please don't do that. But no, please don't.
Right. No. These are all just coming in. Anytime we link, like any email marketing.
Yeah. Always.
Outside source coming in. And so it's gotten so bad now. I've got whole spreadsheets in there for one client, all these UTMs.
Yeah.
Then I forget, like, oh crap, what was that code for?
Right.
Why did we use it? So, all right. Anyway, yeah. Hey guys, thank you so much. Anyone else have any questions? Because it is 12:15 and Mr. David has been talking for over an hour.
I could talk longer. I love what I do.
I know. And it comes through. It's awesome. Anyone else have any questions? SEO and WordPress? We're happy to ask questions about WordPress too. If you guys are stuck on a WordPress question, feel free to raise your hand or just talk. Again, this isn't like a webinar. So if you've got a WordPress problem, go ahead, ask that as well. We got plenty of people here that can help out if you're stuck.
Yeah,
Hint, hint.
so for me, I'm struggling with getting my site speed with shared hosting. And so it's more of a hosting, very beginner. And so I do think I'm going to be able to speed some things up with like WP Rocket, some other plugins, and just obviously optimizing images, kind of some of the elementary things. But any other ideas out there?
What is the web address?
Yeah, so it's a beautiful mess 101.com.
So a lot of people will, a couple things that hopefully help you. I'm really glad you're not just jumping to a more expensive host. Yeah, shared hosting can be a problem, but as you're getting started, maybe that's the right thing, right?
Sure.
Because we got to remember that as far as SEO goes, speed is one of a few hundred different ranking factors. And we don't know the capacity to which speed is in the order of the most important to least ranking factors. So although a lot of people talk about speed these days, we don't want it to be the only thing we're thinking about in terms of SEO, right? So it might be that your speed is okay for where you are right now. I'd almost start with making sure that your content is stuff that people are searching for, right? And make sure that, like you said, make sure these images aren't like massively too large, right? A good guideline, and it's a simple one to reach, is like 100K. Images really don't need to be bigger than 100K. Now, that's an oversimplification, but it might be a good guideline to help you kind of start. Google used to have this really wonderful, that they've graveyarded certification called the Mobile Developers Guideline. And they made this really great point, which was the fastest element to load on any web page is the one you don't include. We know we love to have fancy widgets with fancy effects that do all kinds of cool things, but does it really help the user accomplish the goal that they have in visiting your website, or is it just neat? Now, that doesn't mean you can't have neat things on your website. It just means that we need to really decide whether it's worth it. So starting there is going to help with some of those speed things. WP Rocket's a great solution. Now that WordPress has moved to web, what are we calling it? WebP, you know, that's going to help a little bit too. But I'd almost start by making sure when you're writing on your website, you're writing about things that people want to know about, and then making sure you're keeping track of speed, knowing that maybe one day when the website's really taking off, it's probably going to be worth a better host. But as you're getting started, I wouldn't make that the sole thing you're thinking about just in terms of SEO.
I would also look at your fonts. We've been noticing
Oh,
people
yeah.
that have like page builders and things like that, which is cool. I use Beaver Builder, super fan. But even when you use these page builders, you have to be really careful. One thing is fonts. So people like to pull in all these cool fonts, which is great. I do the same thing, but you want to make sure that the font itself is loaded on your server and you're not pulling it every time you load a page from Google's font, right? So that's a little tick. Another thing is whenever you do pull in an image, you might have optimized the image, but what I notice, and my developers do this, quality check, I'm like, the hell, guys, they'll choose, you'll have small, medium, large, original, and it might be on a page that might only need 650 pixel width image, but the module automatically chooses the full size image, which could be 2,500 pixel width. And so, you just want to make sure that the size of the photo is the right size for that space there. For 600, you don't need the 2,500 pixel width. You just need the 650. So those are the two things I would look if you're using a kind of a page builder. Other things I'm thinking of too, definitely the font, the photos, like you were to mention, David. I use Smush. I don't use Smush. I use a
WP
different
Smush
one.
or Imagify?
Yeah, I use a different, which one?
I use a
Pix-
Midify,
Okay.
which is a WP Rocket
Pixel?
product.
What?
Short pixel.
That's it. Thank you. See, he always comes in right in there. Short pixel. Yeah, I use that one too. So that helps optimize on the fly as well. So what else? Oh, what's your web address, Rhett? I don't know if I have the right one.
It's a beautiful mess 101. That's my wife's business.
Okay, 101.
It's my, unfortunately, we're fixing to have to figure out if we're going to continue letting me tinker or me actually getting
Oh.
just get busy, and then I can tinker on my own and stop. messing.
Tinker. It's the only way you're going to learn. All right, let me share the screen really quick. Do you mind, David? I'm just kind of,
Oh, please.
okay. All right, so I pulled it into PageSpeed Insights. So it's going to take a second here. So I'm just going to look at your site really quick. See, that's nice and clean. Looks good. Oh, I know this one.
That's what I'm saying. She's busy, and a lot of our referrals are, I mean, could teach social media marketing. So she gets a lot of referrals through social media.
Right.
And we haven't pulled a lot of client from organic search. And we're just trying to figure out, and this is more tailored toward business strategy, whether or not we incorporate a professional or if we kind of let me do it myself through some stuff I learned. I've only been doing this 8 months. So like I have no background. So I'm a baby drinking milk.
Right. Well, this one's already telling us that you've got some image size issues. So I think that's one area here that you can already compress some of these images even further. And I'm not sure what these are of. So you have to be careful too. Sometimes what they pull, oh, it's not going to let me.
No.
So the background image, it looks like that you're using here. So I don't know where that's coming from or what that's helping. But I think that goes back to David's question too, of making sure you're actually needing some of these images. It looks like, I'm not sure what this is of. I
wonder
would
if
go.
it's like a frame around a picture.
Oh yeah.
Green frame.
Yeah, that's
Oh,
weird.
it's here.
Oh, there you go.
I think, but you don't really see that frame.
Yeah.
Yeah, there might be something calling this background frame that you're not even using.
Right.
Yeah.
So if you're using like a template theme, like just a theme that you bought somewhere, just be careful because some of these guys are just notorious for throwing everything but the kitchen
Yeah,
sink.
it's running Astra.
Ah, okay.
But depending upon your host, you are running WooCommerce. WooCommerce is very heavy for shared hosting.
Yeah, I am, because she's got a little shop.
Mm-hmm.
Who is the host?
It's DreamHost, but I've had
Okay.
better
Yeah,
luck
they're
with-
not too bad.
I've had better luck with Bluehost as well.
Bluehost is terrible. And GoDaddy is worse.
Okay.
Yes.
DreamHost is actually not bad.
Okay.
Yeah.
I think this is a good use of your time to look into, because even if you're not going to do an SEO campaign, most people consume social on their phones. So if you have a fast loading website, you're going to have a better conversion rate off of your phone, right? People don't have time to wait for the website to load.
No.
That's kind of one of the points. So, forget about SEO for a moment. In making sure your mobile visitors, mostly who are probably coming from social, have a better experience is only going to help them give a much better experience with your website.
That's literally why I'm asking, because it can't load. Like when I'm sharing it, and I shared it with the Home Depot, gal, it's like,
Right.
It takes 8 seconds to load off
Right.
selling them. This is not cool. So
Yeah.
if that makes sense.
Yeah.
I got to learn all this before I can get into amazing SEO stuff.
Yeah.
Well, learning this is part of SEO. I mean, that's what I think as David's trying to point out, how you get this figured out. And that's like the first step to your SEO, because you have to have a really high performing website to work with SEO first. So yeah. And that's the one thing that we do. I'm like you, David, every time we get a new client, the first thing we do is throw it in here, and we have to, and hopefully I'm already managing the site. If I'm not managing the site and I have to have someone else's webmaster to fix it, it's like, I kind of need you to fix these things. But yeah, so Yeah. So I would spend some time learning a little bit about this. That WP Rocket for sure might get you maybe 50% there, but the rest of it will be images, making sure you're using default fonts, you're pulling in the font, you're using Elementor too. So same thing, you might want to check each of these modules.
Yeah.
Double check that you're not using the full size kind of
Yeah.
stuff here. So
Yeah, no, those are all great tips. And this is the first one I did. So
yeah.
I ran a couple more I've done and they're landing at 60. So I'm a lot better than 30.
There you go.
Good Lord. Yeah, and I didn't think it was immediately shifting server speed. Obviously, there's the front end and then there's the back end. And so yeah, we're not getting enough traffic to be VPS or any other kind of server, but I just can't have folks, in the real world taking 8 seconds to load the page.
Yeah, good point. C. Williams, sorry if I missed this. What's the value of QR code being used to access a website? I use QR codes all the time. So I use QR codes for print material. So I've got a client who sends out 3 direct mail letters, and each one of those letters has a QR code that sends them to a specific landing page. And we were talking about UTMs earlier. We add UTMs to each of these URLs. So I know every time someone uses that QR code, which letter they used, how they got there, and I can see it. We have a special custom report in analytics that shows me this person came from letter 1, letter 2, letter 3. We do it on banners. So if they go to any trade shows, they use a QR code for that banner on that trade show. So we know what banners work, what trade show worked. So that's how I use QR codes. Even we do it for business cards. We put a QR code on the back of each salesperson business card. And they just show their QR code, and we know that Renee shared her business card, and you could see the flow on that. Anyone else have any, would they like to talk about QR codes? Other than that, that's how I use it. Anyone else have any questions? Hey, Rhett, thanks for hopping on. Rhett, I met Rhett, about a month ago? He lives in Greatwood with me, so.
Yeah. I actually just Googled digital marketing. You came up and we took a call. It was just so funny because it was like, oh my gosh, like this is SEO on lock. Like I'm houses down from this person. So it was like really cool when I met Christina. And then plug the Agency Mavericks because I've been on a couple of those guys, free training stuff in that Facebook group. And not only is Troy hilarious, I'm digging his cause effect mentality and kind of the idea of, I'm still trying to figure kind of what my voice is in all of this mayhem. So cool to meet you guys. And
well, Rhett, like I said, I don't know if you heard, we're going to have an in-person meetup next month. So I'd love you to hop on out.
Absolutely.
Meet everybody. It will be at the Fort Bend Chamber. So I just messaged them. That's been confirmed now. So next month, guys, June 15th, third Wednesday of every month, we're going to have an in-person WordPress meetup at the Fort Bend Chamber. I don't know if I'm going to have a speaker. I highly doubt it. It'll be mostly just all of us kind of get back together like David was talking about. When's your next one, David? When are you having your in-person?
Our Charlotte, North Carolina one is next Wednesday night at, I think, 7:00 at Rhino Market. So join us.
I'll be there. Flying in just for that. All right, guys. Thanks so much. I appreciate you all. And I will see you guys hopefully next month. Thanks so much, David. It was a really great presentation.
Nice to meet you all. Stay in touch.
Yep, you too.
All right,
this has been recorded. I'm going to put this on YouTube, so everyone. All right, have a good day. Bye, everyone.